Do you feel ignored or disregarded in your relationships, either with a partner or a family member? Do you feel invisible, like you don't matter, like the most important part of you just goes unnoticed and unseen? Now, I am not talking about literally being ignored, however, that might be going on as well. I'm talking about something that's much more difficult to explain and put our finger on. It's a little more subtle, but it certainly shapes how we feel about ourselves and our relationships. In this video, we are going to talk about mirroring and what happens when you don't have it. I'm Robarge, a licensed attachment-focused psychotherapist and a relationship educator, and I have 23 years of experience working with clients, specifically around mirroring. Now, you might be wondering what exactly is mirroring, and once you know how it works, you can choose to keep waiting for others to see you, or you can change what you're willing to accept. Mirroring is when another person accurately reflects back your experience so that you feel seen, known, and heard. It's how a person shows that they can register accurately what is going on for you, your emotions, your meaning, your point of view, your body language. It becomes named and reflected back so that it matches what is happening inside of you. It's about showing interest in your interest. It is caring in action. I want to share a little story about mirroring, and it has to do with my Aunt Lynn. She was visiting with her husband, who's my Uncle Bob, and usually when they came to visit, they would talk to my parents, and they would sit in the living room, and they would have grown-up conversations. Well, the story that I'm telling, it changed my life. It's a very, very important experience because that particular visit, she decided to focus on me. And I was not a kid, I was an equal. I was age 10, but she treated me like an equal. And we started talking and sharing ideas and somehow stumbled upon this idea as if we are home designers or architects and we're going to build some houses. And one idea led to another idea, and it was so exciting and creative, and we're getting out paper and pencil and drawing ideas and spiral staircases and designing the garden and what kind of fabric do you want on the sofa. And we had these books. I found these books that my parents had that had different photos of these grand estates around the world, and we were pointing and sharing the excitement, and it became so much fun that we moved into the garage because we felt like the other people in the room speaking to us or speaking were interrupting us. And so we had to go to the garage to continue our excitement. What I have learned since then, and why that experience was so profound, of how it felt in my body and that level and degree of engagement, was that she was mirroring my excitement, and she was also bringing her own excitement to the experience. And then I would play off of that. And even at age 10, I'm mirroring that back to her. I'm asking her questions about her ideas and what she's doing. And that experience really changed my life. And it let me know what it's like to have mirroring, and also what it's like when you don't get that on a regular basis. When mirroring is sustained, as the way I described with my Aunt Lynn, that it creates what's known as attunement. She and I were attuned, and it just blew my mind. This accurate reflection, and it builds a feeling of secure, trusting relationship. And this is how, over time, when we receive this on a regular basis, we know ourselves better. It's as if we discover ourselves through the other person discovering us. So how does mirroring help us know ourselves better? Other people mirror back to us who we are. So in childhood, parents or caregivers or the adults around us, we internalize their reflection of us, and it becomes our self-image. And we don't form a sense of self on our own. We absorb the one that we are handed. When the mirror is good, it reflects back to us our likes and our preferences, our unique personality traits, our joys and our laughter. We see ourselves in the mirror, and it helps us become who we are. But when the mirror is broken, it reflects back a false image. And because we absorb the reflection, a broken mirror can become a broken self-image. It's hard to accurately picture ourselves when the mirror is distorted. So naturally, you might be asking the question, how do you repair or correct a distorted mirror if you don't even know that you're carrying it? You start by taking an inventory of the ways that you were mirrored or the ways that you were not mirrored. You look back across your history. Where was mirroring accurate? Where did someone reflect back to you something that matched how you knew yourself to be? And where was it inaccurate, where the reflection didn't fit or wasn't true to who you are or wasn't even there at all? Think of a time when you ran into the room, you had just created a piece of artwork, maybe a beautiful painting or a not so beautiful painting, but you were excited about it and you move into the room to show your mother or your brother or your uncle. And did they lean in? Did they smile? Did they ask you questions about your artwork? Did they light up and mirror back to you your excitement? In other words, did they join you in your excitement? Or were they unresponsive? There was a blank expression on their face, generically nodding their head, using a flat, monotone voice, and being disinterested in what you are sharing. As if they're saying, that's nice, dear, pass the salt. Also think about the labels that you were handed as a kid. Perhaps you're too sensitive or too loud or too something, fill in the blank. And whatever it was, the point is that those judgments became internalized, meaning that you started believing them and then judged yourself in the same way. When you take this inventory of your history of being mirrored, something becomes clear. As a child, we didn't have a choice. The reflection that came back, that we received, whether it was attuned or whether it was absent, whether it was engaged or indifferent, it was never something that we controlled. And whatever came back, we absorbed, even when it had nothing to do with our own experience of ourselves. At the time in childhood, you didn't challenge the reflection because you couldn't see that it's off. And that is the exercise. That's what's different about today, is that we could actually start strengthening a choice. We need to learn that the brokenness was in the mirror and is not in us, is not in you. That you need to stop believing the distorted image. Healing begins when you discern positive mirroring from negative mirroring and choose only what is accurate and then reject the rest. Rejecting distorted mirroring is a skill that we must learn. And I love comparing it to gardening, where we say if you want to have a garden, you need sunshine and water. If you want to have a healthy, secure, meaningful relationship, you will need accurate mirroring. Now, I defined mirroring and also that you have choices. Let's keep going because you might be asking, how does previous mirroring trigger us today? The mirroring you received or didn't receive in the past shows up today, and you carry it with you in your adult relationship. It shows up now in the moments when you feel most misunderstood in relationships. When mirroring fell short, it probably happened in two ways, and one of them may be fueling your relationship anxiety today. So let's get into explaining these two kinds of mirrors, because once you hear them, attachment triggers will make more sense. The first is the mirror of absence. This is when you reach for connection and nothing comes back to you. No one engages, your cues get missed. You go under the radar as if you're barely in the room. You don't register to the other person. This is the parent or caregiver who is distracted and checked out or just not present. It's as if the mirror has been misplaced, like losing keys or you left the umbrella on the bus. Often the parent or caregiver inherited their own attachment trauma and lack of mirroring, and it just gets passed on. So they're repeating what they know. And they're not there in the way that you need. So then you grow up without a clear sense of yourself. It's as if you believe that you don't matter and that you're just not worth knowing. The second is the mirror of the distorted image, a false image. So here, plenty does come back. Information gets mirrored, but it's distorted. It's inaccurate. This is an intrusive, enmeshed parent or caregiver who tells you who you are, who has an opinion about your opinions, who tries to insert themselves and tell you what you feel, what you're doing wrong, how you need to change. And this doesn't have to be spoken. Sometimes it's an eye roll, it's a heavy sigh, it's body language giving you the silent treatment or a cold look directed your way. What happens is you internalize that experience as mirroring, and it gives you information about yourself. It's as if the mirror itself is broken, that the tool that they're using is unreliable. And so the mirroring itself was compromised before it even reached you. Often the parent or the caregiver is carrying their own struggles, like mental illness or some active addiction. And it can come on so strong that it overwhelms you. You do see yourself, but only through the lens of their judgments. And over time, you lose trust in getting an accurate read on who you are. And so that the core belief that you carry is that you are defective as a human being, that there's something wrong with you, or that feeling of you'll never measure up, you're just not good enough. Here's something that I've noticed with psychotherapy clients after 23 years of talking about relationships and mirroring is that for many of us, the thing that triggers our relationship distress, which sometimes registers as anxiety or dysregulated nervous system, what it reveals is the kind of relationships that we keep recreating. For some of us, being ignored hijacks the nervous system, that becomes the trigger. There's this electric jolt through our body, and the attachment fear activates. This points back to a mirror of absence, the mirroring that was withheld or non-existent. For others, it might be being misjudged, that turns on a feeling of urgent defensiveness. Someone decides who you are, they make a judgment about you, and you feel that flash of electric, that is not me. You feel defensive, and that points back to a mirror of a false image. And you need to defend against it and make sure that that's not how you're being portrayed. That mirroring in that moment feels incongruent in your body. And often what is so interesting here is that the thing that triggers us is the thing that we have built up a tolerance for. So it means that we can recreate relationships and be okay with them because we tolerate them. If absence is what is familiar, then you might find yourself drawn to people who don't engage you back, where you continually feel unseen and disregarded or undervalued. But the opposite, the other kind of mirror, if you're being misjudged is what is familiar, you've built up this tolerance, and you might find people around you drawing conclusions about your character, saying things about you that are totally inaccurate or a misread of who you are, and then you spend your energy defending yourself, trying to explain the correct version of your identity. Once you notice your very specific trigger pattern, then how do we go about changing it? First, we have to learn how to interrupt the trigger, which of course is easier said than done. Right now, when the trigger hits, probably what's happening is you're reacting and you don't even, or your body is reacting and you don't even have time to think. You're thrown back into a feeling of being unseen or scrambling to defend yourself. It's like becoming a puppet on a string. The pull is somatic, meaning in your body. You feel your racing heart, your muscles tense up, you might feel nauseousness in your stomach, there's a clenching of your jaw, and fear makes you tongue-tied, that you lose your voice. You might even have the feeling that you just want to run and hide and disappear. The change that needs to happen is to catch the trigger in the moment. When you feel it flare up, it activates, you pause and you name it. You ask yourself, is this the mirror of absence or is this the mirror of false image? That small act of naming it, naming the trigger directly, can loosen it. Not always, but sometimes. And it's because you become the one who is interacting directly with the trigger instead of the trigger bulldozing over you. This is about using the power of awareness to create the power of choice. Now, you need to hear this is very important. The trigger used to decide your reaction for you. But if you can insert a pause, you become the one who gets to decide. And this is how healing and change happens. And let's be realistic. Naming it once is not going to undo a lifetime of history. But each time that you build the practice little by little, you create room between the trigger and the reaction. And that is progress. However, I want to be honest with you. It does require patience. This reminds me why my work with clients is long term. I see clients for a number of years because this is not going to change after 6 sessions. It is a practice. Imagine playing a professional sport or wanting to master the piano. You need to give yourself empathy and compassion and trust that even if change sometimes doesn't look like it's happening quickly enough, you need to stay with the practice, be gentle with yourself, because it is hard work. And I always love the phrase, you do what you can. Each day you wake up and you do what you can. Now let's review so far. We talked about how lack of mirroring shaped your self-image and how triggers give you clues about the type of relationships that you create today. But the million-dollar question that you might still be asking is, how do you get the type of mirroring if you never had it? To answer that, I want you to picture a scene of a child lifting their arms up to be held, wanting connection, wanting to be met, and no one responds. And maybe you even hearing this as I say it, that's a pretty sad image. When mirroring doesn't happen, the child feels empty and lost, and we move into the direction of feels abandoned, sometimes feels betrayed. Now, imagine that small moment repeated 10,000 times over the course of childhood. It conditions and teaches a person what to expect from their relationships for years to come. And here's the part that's really worth contemplating. That little child reaching up and waiting for the parent or the caregiver to reach back is still living inside of us regardless of our age. We carry an old expectation into our adult relationships, quietly accepting less than we're getting and less than what we need, because less is what we came to know. If I had to distill down a wisdom insight that has always brought me comfort in this understanding, is that the way forward is not to keep waiting for the right special person to reach back, to finally give us what we want, that type of connection, the connection that we never had. It is to change what you have learned to accept as acceptable. And the change starts here in looking at tolerance. I'm going to say something that sounds almost comical, and we don't hear it very often in this kind of work. We need to be less tolerant. We're usually told to soften and accept, create more spaciousness, accommodate. And here, this goes the other way. You raise your standards of how you let others treat you. You strengthen your boundaries. You become more exacting and demanding about the kind of mirroring that you're looking for. And this does mean speaking up. It does mean articulating your needs. It also might mean upsetting the apple cart a little bit or ruffling feathers, because you need to change your tolerance for getting inaccurate mirroring. Now, we don't usually think of intolerance as a good thing because it sounds like the opposite of growth, but this is a very particular, different kind of intolerance. It is the refusal to keep calling the old emptiness of absent relating normal. It's noticing that when someone cannot meet you, and letting that register as a real absence instead of talking yourself out of it or ignoring the desire to confront it or knowing that something must change. The truth is, your needs matter because emotional connections matter. And putting up with mediocre, hollow mirroring kills connection. It guarantees unhappy, unfulfilling relationships. Now you might be asking yourself, if I stop putting up with poor mirroring, what do I put in its place instead? The answer is learning to trust your own read on things, which means trusting yourself more. You cannot undo what you didn't get, but you can create new experiences today. You cannot go back and make your father curious about you. You cannot make your mother be somebody that she wasn't. What you can build now, the thing that was supposed to be built back then and wasn't, which is a working knowledge of your inner life. What you like, what you cannot stand, what you want, what you're feeling before someone else tells you what you're feeling. I understand truly knowing ourselves is not easy. I see this often in the people that I work with. They struggle to name their own experience. And I might ask about their inner world, and they cannot find the words for a feeling or point to a sensation in the body. One of the most important questions that I ask clients is, what do you notice right now in your body? This reminds me of one of my favorite stories. I was studying acting in New York City, and it was a dance movement class. And the instruction was to find a memory and find the feeling in the memory. And I remember looking around at the other students who appeared to understand the direction, and they were participating in the exercise. And for me, I had a very interesting discovery, almost like an aha moment, where I noticed I couldn't locate my feelings. I knew I had feelings, but I couldn't really call them up and know what they are and name them. It was such an important experience. I will say worth the money of acting class, because it really told me that I don't know who I am. And also simultaneously in that class, it created a little bit of an embarrassment because I didn't want other people to see that I didn't know how to name or feel my own feelings. That day I learned something that I haven't forgotten. Knowing your own experience is a skill, and most of us were never taught that skill. And it might sound obvious, but if you want to know yourself, you have to practice knowing yourself. And this explains the purpose and the importance of therapy, that self-awareness is learned and earned. So let me encourage you to follow these steps. The first step is to start small. This is preferences work, which means, for example, you name what pleases you, and then you name what drains you. You might say to yourself, I want more of this. I am done with that. I like pizza. I don't like broccoli. I like being asked out on dates. I do not like vague one-word text messages. Second step is to keep at it, which means practice, practice, practice. Even when it feels faint at first, your feelings and awareness might be quiet in the beginning, and that's okay. Throughout the day, you can pause and you ask yourself, what do I feel right now in this moment? Over time, your inner signals get louder and clearer the more attention that you give them. Picture like a blurry screen slowly coming into focus. this is what happens internally. You start to see yourself more clearly. And let's anchor the purpose of this practice. When you know your own experience, a false reflection cannot take hold as easily. You're not knocked off your center as easily. Someone tells you who you are, and instead of just swallowing it, you're able to pause and question how accurate and true it is. You have something to check it against. And this, again, means that you have a choice. But knowing yourself is only half the answer. The question that we have asked earlier, but still needs fully addressed, is how do you get proper mirroring if you never had it to begin with? So remember, mirroring is relational, and it happens between two people. And once you better know your own experience, you can recognize when mirroring shows up, and you can begin to practice letting it in. It is also a practice of receiving. Some of us don't know how to receive because the mirroring wasn't there. We didn't strengthen the skill of receiving. The practice is about stepping forward and moving toward others. And it's a sign of emotional availability when we are able to move towards connection. And of course, this is a two-way street. Chances are, like many of us, you could stand to improve your mirroring skills. So even when there is a foundation of emotional intelligence, we still need to keep practicing. I think the image of a garden really works well here, because if you want to have a garden, you need sunshine and water. If you want to have a relationship, you need mirroring. Remember when I mentioned that sustained mirroring creates attunement when I shared the story about my Aunt Lynn? Attunement is empathy plus responsiveness. You recognize what another person is feeling, and you respond in a way that shows them that you understand. The analogy of ballroom dancing really fits perfectly here. When the mirroring dance is working, it looks like two people becoming one on the dance floor, moving together so smoothly that you cannot tell who's leading and who's following. There is a synergy and a kind of oneness. That is attunement. Now, here is the important distinction. It's not about only holding up the mirror one at a time. It's not a clunky, fumbling exchange of now it's your turn, then it's their turn, now it's your turn again, etc. It's much smoother and concurrent. Two people, two mirrors, but one shared experience. And the way it will feel in your body is that there's a sense of flow. Before I end the video, let's do a quick review. We started by talking about what is mirroring and how going without it shapes the way that we see ourselves. Then we looked at how mirroring shows up now in our triggers and in the relationships that we keep recreating. Finally, we talked about how to change it. And there are three takeaways from change, which are: you become less tolerant of poor mirroring, you strengthen your relationship to yourself, and then the third was you move towards the people who are able to practice attuning with you. Thank you for watching today. If you liked this video, more videos to come on the subject of mirroring, so please stay tuned. Also, if you're curious to know more about me, I'm Alan Robarge, a licensed attachment-focused psychotherapist and a relationship educator. I have 23 years experience of working with people who crumble inside when relationships end, or who even suffocate before the end. I help those hurt by love rebuild what was shattered and forge a stronger sense of self. My work is about emotional neglect, attachment trauma, and relationship grief. To learn more about working with me, find the link to my website in the description below. Also in the description, you'll find information about joining my subscription membership here in YouTube, where I share deeper process videos. For last words, I want to speak to you directly. If any of this content landed today or resonates with your experience, please know that I understand how painful that this is. To go without mirroring really impacts us in profound ways throughout our entire life. And at times it's a lonely kind of pain that we carry. So please be gentle with yourself, offer yourself some kindness. And I also want to extend empathy to you as you are learning new skills and inviting a different kind of mirroring into your life. And I've always loved the idea that awareness itself is change. So good for you in investing in your healing work and increasing your awareness of your own experience and how to improve your relationships. Thank you for watching.